I work the overnight shift at St. Almond's Regional Medical Center, and I have for 11 years. I'm a biomedical equipment technician. Most people don't know what that means. It means that when a ventilator throws a fault code at 3 in the morning, I'm the one who gets paged. When the pneumatic tube system jams between pharmacy and the ICU, I open the access panel. When a nurse calls down because an infusion pump is beeping and nobody on the floor can figure out why, I go up. I know the machines. I know the building. I know every floor, every supply closet, every electrical room, every shaft and chase and ceiling void in this hospital. Or I thought I did. And that's the only reason I'm writing this down. Because I was the person least likely to get confused about the layout of St. Almond's. And I got confused anyway. And now I don't think confused is the right word. St. Almond's is a mid-size regional hospital built in 1971 with a vertical addition completed in 1994. The original structure is 5 stories. The addition brought it to 8. There's a basement level, designated B, which houses central sterile processing, the morgue, mechanical rooms, and bulk storage. Then, floors 1 through 8. Floor 1 is the emergency department and main lobby. Floor 2 is surgical. 3 is the ICU and cardiac step-down. 4 is medical surgical. 5 is labor and delivery. 6 is the behavioral health unit. 7 is administrative offices and medical records. 8 is long-term acute care, though it's been operating at reduced capacity for years, and most nights there are only 6 or 7 patients up there. The elevator system consists of 3 passenger elevators and 1 freight elevator. The freight elevator runs from the basement to the 8th floor without restriction. The passenger elevators also run from B to 8. The panel inside each cab has buttons for B, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. 9 buttons. That's it. That's always been it. On the night of March 14th, I was on call, which at St. Almond's means I'm physically in the building, stationed in the biomed workshop on the basement level. Around 2:40 a.m., I got a page from the 8th floor. One of the older Alaris infusion pumps was alarming, and the night nurse couldn't clear it. Routine call. I logged the ticket in our system, grabbed my kit, and walked to the freight elevator at the end of the basement corridor. I pressed the call button. The elevator arrived. I stepped in and pressed 8. The cab rose. I could feel the familiar rhythm of it, the slight hesitation between floors that I've felt 1,000 times, the way the motor hums a half-tone higher when it passes the 5th floor because of the load balance on the counterweight. I know this elevator the way you know the sound of your own car engine. And on this particular ride, between the 5th and 6th floor, the cab stopped. Not a hard stop, a deceleration. The kind of smooth stop the elevator makes when it's arriving at a called floor. The doors opened. I was looking at a hallway. The hallway was lit, but not with the fluorescent panels St. Almond's uses on every floor. The light was warmer, more yellow. The floor was the same composite tile we have throughout the building, the same mottled gray-green pattern, but the grout lines were darker, almost black, like they hadn't been cleaned in a very long time. The walls were the same institutional off-white, but there were no room number placards, no nursing station visible, no hand sanitizer dispensers mounted to the walls, no crash cart, no whiteboard with patient names, just a long corridor with doors on both sides, all of them closed, and at the far end, a window that showed nothing but dark. The floor indicator inside the cab read nothing. The small LED panel where it normally displays B through 8 was blank. I stood there for about 5 seconds. I remember the air, It smelled like St. Almonds, but not quite. There was an undertone beneath the normal antiseptic smell, something organic, like old flowers in stale water. It wasn't overpowering, it was just slightly wrong. I pressed the door close button. The doors closed. I pressed 8 again. The elevator resumed. It arrived at 8. I stepped out into the 8th floor, which looked exactly the way it always does, and I went and fixed the infusion pump. It was a clogged air inline sensor. Took me 12 minutes. On the ride back down, the elevator did not stop at the unlisted floor. I want to be clear about something. I did not panic. I did not feel terrified. What I felt was confused in a professional sense. I maintain the building systems. I've reviewed the elevator inspection certificates. I've been present for the annual load tests. I know the shaft drawings. There is no interstitial floor between 5 and 6. There never was. The 1994 edition was built on top of the original structure, and floors 6 through 8 are vertically consistent. There is no mechanical interstitial. There is no structural gap. I've been in the elevator shaft myself, harnessed in, when we had the hydraulic seals replaced in 2019. There is nowhere for a floor to be. I told myself it was a half-sleep hallucination. I'd been dozing in the workshop before the page came in. It was nearly 3 in the morning. The mind does things at that hour. I logged the infusion pump repair, went back to the workshop and finished my shift. I didn't mention it to anyone. 9 days later, on March 23rd, I was in the freight elevator again, this time going from the 2nd floor to the basement. Between floors 1 and B, the elevator stopped. The doors opened. Same hallway, same warm, yellow-tinted light, same tile, same dark grout, same closed doors, same absent placards. The window at the end of the corridor, the faint smell, but this time, there was something different. One of the doors, about 4 down on the left side, was open, not fully, maybe 8 inches, and the light inside that room was on, but it was a different color than the hallway light, whiter, clinical. The floor indicator in the cab was blank again. I let the doors close. I pressed B. The elevator delivered me to the basement. This time, I did not tell myself it was a hallucination. You can hallucinate once, twice. With that level of visual consistency and sensory detail, you are not hallucinating. I am a technician. I troubleshoot systems. So, I started troubleshooting. The next day, I pulled the elevator maintenance logs from our CMMS. Every ride the freight elevator takes is logged electronically. Timestamp, origin floor, destination floor, door open duration, door close duration, total travel time. I found my March 14th ride. Departed B at 2:43:11, arrived at 8 at 2:44:27. Total travel time, 76 seconds. I found a normal B to 8 ride from the week before for comparison. Total travel time, 71 seconds, 5 seconds longer, consistent with a stop and door cycle. I found my March 23rd ride. Departed floor 2 at 1:17:44. Arrived at B at 1:18:31. Total travel time, 47 seconds. A normal 2 to B ride takes about 38 seconds, 9 seconds longer. The door had been open longer the second time. That was consistent with my memory. I'd looked at the hallway longer. But here's the thing that made my hands feel cold. In both logs, the destination and origin were correctly recorded. B to 8, 2 to B. There was no record of an intermediate stop. The system logged the extra time, but it didn't log the stop. It didn't log a door open event at an unlisted floor. It logged the duration correctly, which means the system was tracking the ride in real time, but it produced no record of where those extra seconds went. I went to the physical elevator shaft. I took the access ladder from the basement mechanical room. I climbed up, floor by floor, with a flashlight. Between every floor there is approximately 14 feet of shaft. Concrete block walls, guide rails, counterweight, cables. Between the 5th and 6th floor, 14 feet of shaft. Between the 1st floor and the basement, 14 feet of shaft. No doors, no recessed openings, no sealed-over entrances, nothing. I measured. I used a laser distance meter. Every interfloor distance was within a quarter inch of the others. There is nowhere for those hallways to exist, but the system logged the time. Over the next several weeks, I rode the freight elevator at every opportunity. I made excuses to go to different floors. I tracked every ride in a personal notebook. Time of departure, time of arrival, calculated travel time, actual travel time. Out of 73 logged rides between March 24th and April 30th, 4 showed excess travel time, an extra 3 seconds on April 2nd, an extra 6 on April 11th, an extra 4 on April 19th, an extra 11 on April 28th. On those 4 rides, the doors did not open. The elevator simply took longer than it should have. I felt the deceleration, the slight shift in momentum, but the doors stayed shut and the cab resumed. Like the floor was there, and the elevator acknowledged it, but didn't commit to the stop. Except on April 28th, 11 extra seconds. The doors opened. The hallway was the same, but there were more doors open this time, 3 of them, on different sides. And in one of the rooms, the one closest to the elevator, I could see the edge of a hospital bed. Standard issue, the same model we use at St. Almond's. The bed was made, white sheets, white blanket, the kind with the thin blue stripe at the hem that we get from our linen service. The head of the bed was elevated to about 30 degrees. There was an IV pole next to it. No bag on the pole, no patient in the bed. But the pillow had an indentation. I let the doors close. I started asking around, not about the floor. I'm not stupid. I asked about the building history. I talked to Gerald, the facilities director, who's been at St. Almond's since 1988. I asked him if there had ever been plans for additional floors, interstitial levels, anything like that. He said no. I asked if the 1994 addition had originally been designed with more floors. He said the permits were for 3 additional floors and that's what was built. I asked if there were any sealed areas in the building. He looked at me oddly and said, no. I pulled the original building plans from the county records office. I pulled the 1994 addition plans. I compared them to each other and to the current as-built drawings in our facilities office. They matched. No discrepancies, no hidden floors, no structural voids large enough for a corridor. I requested the elevator controller logs directly from the manufacturer's remote monitoring system. They provided a data dump for the freight elevator covering January through April. I spent an entire weekend going through it. Every ride was logged with origin, destination, and timestamps. In the rides where I had recorded excess travel time, the manufacturer's logs showed the same timestamps I had, the same durations. But like our internal system, no intermediate stops were recorded. The controller firmware simply didn't generate a stop event, as if the elevator hadn't stopped at all, but the clock kept running anyway. I emailed the manufacturer's service engineer. I described the issue as intermittent excess travel time without corresponding event logs. He suggested possible encoder drift on the floor position sensor and scheduled a service visit. The technician came on May 5th. He replaced the encoder, recalibrated the leveling sensors, and ran a full diagnostic. Everything passed. He told me the system was operating within spec. I asked him to ride the elevator with me, multiple trips, different floors. We did 12 rides. Total travel times were all normal. No stops, no excess time. He left. That night, on my first solo ride, the elevator stopped between 3 and 4. The doors opened. The hallway was longer this time, or I perceived it as longer. More doors were open, 5 or 6. The light was the same warm yellow, but now there was sound. Faint, not mechanical, not voices exactly. A kind of low tonal hum, like a ventilation system running at a frequency I couldn't identify. It wasn't the HVAC. I know what every air handler in this building sounds like. This was something else. And at the far end of the corridor, past the window that showed only darkness, there was a nursing station. I could see the edge of the counter, the shape of a monitor, the back of a desk chair. The chair was turned slightly, as though someone had just stood up. I pressed door close.
The doors didn't respond for 3 seconds. Then they closed.
After that, I installed a personal camera in the freight elevator. Small, battery-operated, motion-activated. I mounted it in the upper corner behind a ceiling tile where it wouldn't be noticed. I let it run for 2 weeks. I reviewed the footage on May 18th. Every ride I took was captured. On the rides where the elevator behaved normally, the footage was normal. On the 3 rides during those 2 weeks where I experienced excess travel time, the footage showed the same thing. The cab decelerating, a pause, and then re-accelerating. The doors never opened on camera. The floor indicator stayed lit. No hallway was visible. But in the cab, I could see myself. On one of those rides, I watched myself on the footage, standing in the elevator, looking straight ahead, and I could see my expression change. My eyes moved. My body shifted slightly, the way you adjust when you're looking at something. On the footage, I was clearly reacting to something, but the footage showed closed doors and an empty cab. I watched that clip maybe 30 times. There's a moment about 4 seconds in where I reach toward the door close button. On the footage, the doors are already closed. My hand reaches for a button to close doors that, according to the camera, never opened. I don't know how to make sense of that. Either my perception is wrong and the doors never open, or the camera can't capture what happens during those stops. Neither answer is acceptable to me. I started avoiding the freight elevator. I took the stairs, or I used the passenger elevators. For about a week, nothing happened. Then, on May 27th, I was in passenger elevator 2, going from 1 to 7. Between 4 and 5, the elevator stopped. The doors opened. The hallway was there. It wasn't just in the freight elevator. I transferred to day shift. I told my supervisor it was for personal reasons. He approved it without questions. During the day, surrounded by staff and patients and noise and light, the elevators behaved normally. I never experienced a stop during daytime hours. Whatever the pattern was, it was nocturnal, or at least tied to low occupancy periods. But I couldn't stay on days forever. We were short-staffed. By mid-June, they needed me back on nights. I agreed because I needed the differential pay, because my daughter was starting college in the fall, and the tuition was what it was. So I went back. The first 3 nights were quiet, normal rides, normal times. On the 4th night, June 22nd, the elevator stopped between 2 and 3. The doors opened. The hallway was there. And this time, there was a patient, not standing, not looking at me, lying in one of the beds in one of the rooms with the door open. I could see them through the doorway from the elevator. An elderly person, gender indeterminate at that distance, lying in the bed with the head elevated. The IV pole had a bag on it now. The tubing ran to the patient's arm. A cardiac monitor next to the bed showed a rhythm. Green line, steady peaks. The patient was real. The equipment was real. The monitor was a Philips IntelliView, the same model we use on 4 and the ICU. The IV pump was an Alaris 8100. The same model I service weekly. The patient didn't move. Their eyes were closed. They appeared to be sleeping. I let the doors close. I went to the bathroom and sat in a stall for 10 minutes. Then, I went back to the workshop and pulled the patient's census for every floor. I counted every admitted patient against the census log. Every patient was accounted for. Nobody was missing. Nobody was on a floor they weren't supposed to be on. I checked the bed count. We had 114 patients admitted that night across all floors. The census matched. There were no extra patients. Whoever was in that bed was not in our system. I kept working. I kept riding the elevator because I had to. The stops continued. Not every night.
Not predictably. Sometimes twice a week, sometimes nothing for 10 days. But they continued. And each time, the floor was a little more complete. More rooms occupied. More monitors beeping. More IV pumps running. I saw meal trays once, on a cart in the hallway, covered with those plastic domes. I saw a linen hamper, half full. I saw a whiteboard at the nursing station with writing on it, but I was too far away to read it. I never stepped off the elevator. I need you to understand that. Not once. Something about the threshold felt absolute. The elevator was the building I knew. That hallway was not. I stayed in the cab every time. In August, the stops started lasting longer. The doors would stay open for 15, 20 seconds before responding to the close button. During one of these longer stops, I heard a sound from one of the rooms. A call bell. The exact two-tone chime that our Roland nurse call system makes. Someone in one of those rooms had pressed their call button. Nobody came. The nursing station was empty. The call bell chimed again and again. The doors closed. Last month, I was doing a routine PM on the passenger elevator control boards. I had the panel open in the machine room on the 8th floor. I was checking relay contacts. Behind the main controller board, tucked against the back wall of the cabinet where you'd never see it unless you had the board pulled forward, there was a relay I didn't recognize. It wasn't on any wiring diagram. It wasn't connected to any labeled circuit. It was wired into the floor select system with two small gauge wires that ran through the same conduit as the standard wiring, but were a slightly different color. Not the standard red, white, black, and green. These were a dull amber. The relay had no manufacturer marking, no part number. It was slightly warm to the touch, which meant it was energized. I traced the wires as far as I could. They ran down the conduit, into the shaft, and disappeared into the concrete wall between the 5th and 6th floor. I could not find where they terminated. I could not find them on the other side of the wall. I left the relay in place. I don't know why. Every instinct I have as a technician told me to disconnect it, trace it, document it, report it. I put the panel back together and closed the cabinet. 3 days later, I was walking past the facilities director's office and I saw a set of drawings on his desk. I glanced at them. They were architectural plans, but not the ones I'd pulled from the county. These had a different title block. The architect's name was different. The date was different. And in the section view, between what should have been the 5th and 6th floors, there was a floor. It was labeled with a single character that I didn't recognize. Not a number, not a letter, a symbol. It looked hand-drawn, even in the printed plan, like someone had added it after the drawing was completed. Gerald came back into his office, and I asked him about the plans. He looked at his desk, looked at me, and said, "What plans?" There was nothing on his desk. I was looking right at it. The desk was empty. I'm writing this at home. It's 4 a.m. and I'm sitting at my kitchen table. I am not scheduled tonight. I am supposed to be sleeping. 20 minutes ago, I woke up because the building's elevator made a sound. I live in a 2-story house. There is no elevator in my house, but I heard it. The mechanical hum, the deceleration, the soft chime, the doors opening. It came from the hallway outside my bedroom.
I did not open the bedroom door. I lay still and listened. After about 10 seconds, I heard the doors close and the cab move, going down, the sound fading like it was descending through floors beneath my foundation. My house has no basement. I've been thinking about the call bell, the patient pressing the button over and over, and nobody coming. I've been thinking about the census log and the patients that don't appear in our system. I've been thinking about the bed with the indented pillow and the IV pole with no bag and the cardiac monitor showing a steady rhythm for a person who doesn't exist on any record. And I've been thinking about something I noticed during one of the later stops, one of the longer ones, in September, when the doors stayed open for nearly 30 seconds. I looked at the nursing station whiteboard. I was closer that time, close enough to read one line of text. It was a name, a patient name, written in blue dry erase marker in the standard format we use at St. Almond's. Last name, first name, room number, attending physician. The name was mine. I haven't told anyone. I haven't quit. I go in for my shift tonight at 11. I'll clock in. I'll go to the basement workshop. At some point, I'll get a page, and I'll walk to the elevator, and I'll press a button for a floor that exists. The elevator will decide if that's where I'm going.